Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down powerful business ideas. Today, we're looking at a simple but honestly a revolutionary concept called the empty chair, and it's a story that comes to us from the Business Gambit.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to go back in time to the early 2000s. Inside Amazon, the company was basically at war with itself. You had engineering teams wanting more time to build, marketing pushing for faster launches, operations demanding stability. It was a constant tug of war. Meetings weren't just meetings. They were all-out battles over priorities, resources, and who was to blame.
So all this constant friction, it led CEO Jeff Bezos to completely reframe the conversation with a single, really powerful question.
To redirect all that fighting, Bezos brought in a new, non-negotiable rule. In every single high-level meeting, there would always be one empty chair.
And the genius of this idea is just how simple it is. You see, that empty chair, it wasn't some silly gimmick. It was a physical stand-in for the most important person who wasn't actually in the room, the customer. Every decision, every argument now had to be seen through the eyes of the person sitting in that empty seat.
Okay, so what happens when that chair gets, well, ignored? When a company gets totally wrapped up in its own internal games? For that, we've got to look at the cautionary tale of WeWork.
In 2016, if you walked into pretty much any department at WeWork, you would have found a party. The real estate team, popping champagne for setting lease records. Marketing was celebrating their viral campaigns. Sales was absolutely crushing their membership targets. On paper, every single department was winning. Big time.
But here's the crazy part. While every team was off winning its own little game, the company as a whole was losing a staggering $1.9 billion a year. They weren't playing the same game at all. They got so focused on their own internal scorecards that they completely forgot about the only game that actually matters: building a business that can last.
So, how in the world does a simple, empty chair fix a problem that huge? Well, the magic here is that it doesn't just make the conflict disappear. It does something way more powerful. It redirects it.
Suddenly, the whole dynamic in the room just flips. The conversation changes from, my department needs this, to, hang on, what does the customer in that chair actually need? Internal rivals suddenly become partners, united against a common enemy, the customer's problem.
All right, let's look at this in action with two companies that made very, very different choices. One chose to serve the person in that chair like their life depended on it, and the other, well, they pretty much ignored them completely.
First up, Airbnb. Back in 2008, investors just weren't interested. So what did the founders do? They didn't broaden their focus. They went super narrow. They literally went out and met their earliest users face to face, learning that what they really craved were authentic, creative experiences. So they went back and refined everything, the photos, the messaging, to serve that one specific desire perfectly. They figured out who was in the chair, and then they built the whole company around them.
But, there's always another path. Instead of serving the customer, you can turn inward and just focus on your own numbers. Things like cutting costs. And that decision, well, that brings us to the story of Circuit City.
Man, this timeline tells such a tragic story. To compete on price, Circuit City figured the best way to win was just to slash costs. So what they do? They fired their most experienced, knowledgeable salespeople, the people who actually knew what they were talking about, and replaced them with cheaper hourly workers. Of course, the customer experience totally collapsed, sales tanked, and within just a few years, they were bankrupt. They played for the spreadsheet, and they left the customer's chair completely and utterly empty.
So what's the big takeaway here? What's the one thing we really need to get from all these stories?
The central lesson is right here. The empty chair doesn't get rid of disagreements, it redirects them. The real power of this whole thing isn't about avoiding arguments. It's about making sure you're having the right arguments, the ones that are all about creating value for the customer, not about winning some internal turf war.
It's such a simple tool, but it can literally transform any team, any business, any project. It doesn't cost anything, you don't need a task force, all you need is a chair and a little shift in perspective. And that leaves us with one final, really important question to ask ourselves in our own work. Who, or what, is sitting in your empty chair?